everybody? It's your boy Icon with a Marvel movie review, Wakanda Forever. And, this is, got a lot of mixed feelings about this. And as I say that, I need to start by just getting this out. Well, I have two. I need to make 2 points. I need to make two things perfectly clear, and then we can move on to the review. I did enjoy the movie. You know, from and I'm gonna choose these words very carefully. I enjoyed what they gave me based on I enjoyed what they gave me based on the tools that they were allowed to use at their disposal. And there's a huge difference between the movie that you wanted versus the movie that you got. And a lot about this wasn't the movie that I wanted, but the movie that I got wasn't bad, and I did enjoy it. With that being said, I still hold true to my point because I made this point several times before. You check out the Tacos and Geek podcast. Check out my other reviews. Like I've said this 50 million times, and I'm going to say this one more time, and then I'm not going to speak about this again because it's over now. Despite how the movie was handled, because if you watch, because there's going to be spoilers out the ass. If you watch the movie and you saw the end credit scene with how the movie ended, it was very nice. It was very sweet. I saw what they were trying to do. And I respect what they were trying to do based on what the mouse may have told them what they can and cannot do. So they made the best decision that they could make, again, given the conditions that were placed in front of them. But I'm still always going to be in the camp of that they should have just recast T'Challa. You have Chadwick Boseman, who's a beloved actor, and you also have the Marvel character T'Challa, who is a superhero. Chadwick Boseman, as much as we love Chadwick Boseman is he's not T'Challa. He played T'Challa. He doesn't own T'Challa. He doesn't own the rights to the character. He didn't create the character. He's just an actor who's playing the character. The same way how 50 million people have played Batman, a bunch of people have played Spider-Man. They're actors that step into this character's role. And we all love the role of, Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. We loved his portrayal of the character. And it is, to this day, it is still extremely unfortunate about his passing and to hear about his passing. But I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Just because we unfortunately lost Chadwick Boseman did not mean we also had to lose T'Challa. And I would like to think that Chadwick Boseman himself would have wanted another black actor to step into that role and continue on the legacy of the character T'Challa. But now, thanks to the decisions made by the mouse, and there was a stamp put on this based on how the movie went, at least for the moment, the character T'Challa is going to be stuck in a vault somewhere and it's going to be the next generation to have to pull those stories out of the woodwork. So with that being said, and again, so now going into the actual movie. So that's my thoughts. That's how I feel about it. And like I said, but I did enjoy the movie. So the film does start, and they a lot of things bothered me. So as we're I enjoyed a lot of things. Some things bothered me, but as we're talking about it, I'm going to, as I always do, I'm going to talk about certain things and give my opinion based on those certain things. Right out the gate, when it comes to how they handled the death of the character T'Challa, it kind of bothered me a little bit because the movie starts and then Shuri is just she's trying to come up with a solution to fix the heart-shaped herb, thinking that it could save her brother's life because they randomly told us that, the king has some undisclosed illness and he's on his deathbed. And then it was very quick. And then the mom, Angela Bassett came in the room and then she's like, your brother has passed. And then, she starts crying and then they fade to black. The Marvel logo comes on, which was a nice tribute to Chadwick Boseman because the whole Marvel page thing flipping, it was all about Chadwick Boseman. But I'm just and it's weird. And again, it's I'm torn here because I understand, because you can always make the argument, well, what were they supposed to do? You could always make that argument. My problem is, that and that obviously wasn't the opening scene they had originally intended for the film. So I get that too, but it just felt rushed. Like it literally came across as like, hey, look, he's gone. Everybody know he gone. They know we didn't recast him. We have to find a way to kill the character off in the film. It was one of those, let's just quickly get this thing out of the way so we don't have to talk about it anymore. And it's like, it just felt rushed to me. So now that that's out of the way, and, like, and the king is dead and buried, we find out that Angela Bassett's character, she's the one who actually stepped into the role as being the ruler. Because obviously the queen is still there, the princess is there, but Shuri's not in a place where she wants to actually rule the kingdom. And the queen, she just, she steps into the role, and then she steps in as like queen mother. That's, they kept calling her queen mother. And she was at the World Council where the American government, surprise surprise, they're trying to get their hands on vibranium, because they're just like, oh, we are disappointed and ashamed that you did not share the Wakandan secrets and the vibranium that the king promised, the blah blah blah. And then she was like, first of all, she's like, we are not going to share the vibranium with you, because you will then create weapons and turn them on the world. And she makes a valid point, because you're not asking for vibranium so you can use it for medicine, so you can use it to build communities and build affordable housing or whatever the case may be. It's like, it's the U.S. government. They just want to make weapons. The U.S. government is solely based on the thing like, hey, you have something that we don't have and we just want it. And that was the whole thing. And she was just like, no, you're not getting it. So the American government does the one thing that the American government is good for, and they end up like searching the globe trying to find their own vibranium. They end up with a machine that a scientist created, that can track vibranium. And they used that machine to track some vibranium. They found vibranium, but the vibranium that they found, it wasn't in Wakanda. It was actually under the sea. So they go under the sea and they find the vibranium. And when they find the vibranium that's under the sea, they get attacked by the cast of Avatar. And when the cast of Avatar comes out and attacks all, like the American soldiers, then we see the Submariner, well, that was his superhero name, the Submariner. Like we see him, and then he got the wings on his feet and everything, and like his Avatar people, like, they kill all the soldiers, whatever. But then also the Wakandans, they caught a bunch of people, like government soldiers, who were also trying to steal vibranium. So they take those soldiers to the American embassy, and then that's when she was just like, if you ever come after vibranium again, we're gonna kill you. And then he was just like, then the guy, the white dude who was in charge, he was like, well, you can't stop us from searching the planet. And she was like, well, good luck with that. But there is vibranium now, because it's under the sea, and like then the sea people, the sea community, like, they're the ones that have it and they're trying to protect it. Shuri now, again, she's basically like trying to, rebuild Wakanda in a new form. Like, she's coming up with new costumes, new designs, new things. Okoye, she hates all the costumes, but they're trying to get her to basically like calm down, take a moment and soak in like her brother's passing, but she's not really trying to do it because she just wants to get buried in her work. M'Baku, who honestly was not in the film that long, and I'm very surprised about that. One thing about this film that I did notice, the male presence in this film was not there. Aside from Namor, like, the male presence in this film was really not there, because obviously, T'Challa, he passed away. Forrest Whitaker's character, he died in the last film. Michael B. Jordan's character, he dead. T'Challa's best friend who betrayed the government, he's locked up in prison, and they didn't even have a scene with him in prison to have a conversation with him. He was just gone. And I'm just like, because in the first film, I was like, wasn't there a lot more men like in this film? And then M'Baku shows up, and he's only there for like a scene or two where he's talking to Shuri at the funeral, and then we don't see him again till the end of the film. So I'm like, and I don't have a problem with the film being female heavy. I really don't. It was just one of those things where, like, when you watch the first film and then watch the second film, you legitimately realize a lot of people are gone. The Queen Mother, she's talking to her daughter, and she's trying to get her to open up, to the rest of the world and like take more of a role on the kingly ship. So then Namor comes out of the water, and then he's just like, oh, Wakanda looks nice, but it's nothing compared to where we live. And then, like, they're having a conversation and a standoff, and he's just like, listen, the American government, they have a machine that can track vibranium, and the vibranium that they're tracking, it belongs to us, and we have it under the sea. And then that's when she was like, how do you have vibranium? And then Shuri was like, it's all over his neck, because he had like vibranium beads and jewels and everything. He was just like, listen, if the American government comes for the vibranium and they end up finding out about our civilization, we're going to blame that shit on you, and we're going to kill the Americans, and we're going to kill Wakanda. So he told them, he was like, listen, you got a week. It was like a week or 24 hours, something. He gave him a time period. He was just like, you better find the scientist and bring the scientist over, to turn the scientist over to us so we can kill the scientist, so the person who created this machine, can never create the machine again. And that was a little silly to me because if they got the blueprint from from the scientist, if they got the information to build a machine to track vibranium and other precious metals, killing the scientists at this point doesn't make any sense because if the American government got the idea from the scientists, why would they still not have the plans for that? Because the scientists did not build the machine. The American government built the machine. Why would they not have the blueprint to build another one? So I'm like, dude, you're going after, like Namor, like his thinking was on that you're going after the wrong person. But the only reason why we had to go after the scientists was because it introduced another new character going forward, which is Riri Williams, otherwise known as Ironheart. And my thoughts on Ironheart: the actress who played her, I did like her. The problem that I had with it, first of all, they didn't do her justice by putting her in cornrows. And I feel like they went out of their way to make her like extremely hood because Wakanda, like, I mean, I feel like they were trying to do the whole thing where they were just like, oh, the Wakandans, they're refined, like they're educated, they speak proper and come from a place of wonder and mystery. So they have to interact with some ghetto ass black chick. Because I feel like the way her character was portrayed was like overly hood. And it really wasn't that serious because the character of Riri Williams, she wasn't, for lack of a better term, like she wasn't like like hood, or she wasn't ghetto. She lived in New York City. She was from the hood, but she was a genius and she just spoke like a normal person. She wasn't all like, hey y'all and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I feel like they overdid that just to counteract her interacting with the Wakandans. And then and that was another thing I didn't like because she's supposed to be like a genius who learned how to build things from her father, which they did keep that in the film. The reason why she becomes Ironheart is because she ended up building her own Iron Man suit based on parts of broken Iron Man suits that Tony Stark had dropped all over the city. She found like spare Iron Man parts all over the place, and then she built her own Iron Man suit. But she was from New York City. They have her here, like she's like going to school in Massachusetts. As a matter of fact, she lived in Massachusetts because she wasn't living on campus. She had like her own garage and she was living at home. So it's like now she's from like Boston, and I'm just and it's like that kind of bothered me. Like I said, and then it's like she was like overly hood, but it almost kind of felt like God forbid we have like a smart, intelligent, genius black woman. So it's just like, oh, because she's supposed to be like a genius on the level of a Tony Stark, she just can't be a genius that just happens to be a black female. I almost felt like they had to make her ghetto just to counteract the fact that she was a genius. And it's like, whether I'm right or wrong, it's like that just really bothered me because I was like, there was no reason for her to be that hood. But and then she kind of played like the comic relief role and thing because she was the one making all the damn jokes. So anyway, so Okoye and Shuri, they end up going to find her because, like I said, Namor said, if you don't find the scientist, like, I'm gonna kill you. When they find out that she's only 19, they were just like, listen, we can't let him kill her because it's a child. Like, we're not gonna let him kill a child. So so then the U.S. government, they find out that Wakanda's there. They find out that that Shuri's there with Riri, and then they run up on her. The U.S. government's trying to get them, and then they're running from the government. The girl already had an Iron Man suit, and it was never explained how she built it. That like that really bothered me. And then then like they try to escape. When they try to escape from the U.S. government, they end up bumping into Namor and the gang, and then there's this big fight on the bridge to the point where Namor and them, they captured Riri, they captured Shuri, and then they knocked out Okoye because she fought Atuma, and Atuma whooped that ass. And I was disappointed in Atuma as well because from what I know from Atuma, it's based on a lot of like the animated series that comes out. And I was under the impression that Atuma was more of an important character. Like here, he was just like some deaf mute. Like he barely spoke, and it was more like he was just like Namor's like muscle. And I'm like, wasn't Atuma supposed to be like his daddy? Like, wasn't Atuma like the king of the underwater kingdom, before Namor took over? So the role of Atuma was extremely dumbed down, and I mean that's whatever, but I'm just basing that on what I know from Atuma, from what I've seen before. They had like this random Asian girl that was whooping everybody's ass. She was actually very cool, but we never actually got to see her versus Okoye, and I'm like, that's the matchup I actually wanted to see. But then so like Namor and them, they snatch both of them up, they take them back under the sea, and then Okoye has to go home in shame. She has to report back to the queen. So she goes back to the queen, and then this part was actually very cool because when she told the queen that she had failed, and she didn't get, and the princess was taken by the enemy and everything, then Angela Bassett's character, she got to the point where she couldn't take no more, and then she was like, Okoye, she's like, you would be stripped of the title of general, and she's like, you will be court-martialed and shamed in front of Wakandan society. And then like Okoye, she was begging her. She was like, oh, I gave my life for the crown and for the throne and for Wakanda. She's like, do not strip me of everything that I hold dear. And then that's when Angela Bassett hit her with the fact, because she was like, first of all, bitch, she was like, in the first movie, she said when Michael B. Jordan's character came and took over, she said you sided with him, and instead of helping, and she did, because Angela Bassett legitimately asked her for help. She was like, help us take back the throne. And then Okoye was just like, I cannot, because he is king now and I must honor the king. And then she was just like, first of all, you turned your back, and I had to go beg M'Baku for protection and shit because you ain't want to help me. And then the queen, she was just like, yeah, then I told you to go with my daughter and make sure nothing happens to her. And then you get her snatched up by the water people. So she was like, bitch, you's done. She's like, you're done. Like, it's a wrap for you. She's like, that's strike two. She was like, that's a strike two. There will not be a third. So she kicks her out, strips her of her rank and everything, and then now she is completely shamed. So then now she ends up, so then because of that, the queen, she has no choice. She ends up going to find Lupita, to try to rescue Shuri. She finds Lupita in Haiti, like, she was in Haiti, yeah, I believe she was in Haiti, and then because they kept saying the name weird. And when she finds her, and this was funny too, because when she finds Lupita, she was just like, she was like, when Wakanda fell due to Thanos and everything, like, you weren't there and we were thinking about you and blah, blah, blah. And then I was just like, holy shit, she actually wasn't there. Like, she wasn't around during the battle. She wasn't around during all the fighting and everything. And she legit hasn't been seen since the first Black Panther movie. But then we find out why later. But then she told us, she was just like, she was like, my daughter's been snatched up. And then she's like, you weren't at the funeral, so you owe me. She's like, I need a spy, to go rescue my daughter. So she goes down, so she agrees to do it. And then she goes under the sea to go rescue her daughter. Shuri then has a conversation with Namor. We get Namor's backstory about how his people actually existed on land, and then they ate some magical meteor that came out of the sky. They made, like, the shaman made his mama drink it while she was pregnant with him, and then he used the M word because he said it turned him into a mutant, and then now he ended up having, like, winged feet and, like, pointy ears and stuff. So but he specifically did use the M word. He did say mutant. So I guess that's going to mean something at some point down the line. But, but then he said, but because his people, they all drunk the liquid from that meteor, that's why they have blue skin, but it put them in a state where they couldn't really survive on land like that, and they had to go underwater in order to breathe, which is how they became like mer people. So so then his mama died, and now, like, he's the ruler, and then he's trying to protect all their secrets, and they just want to be left alone. So then he's talking to Shuri about that, and he was just like, help me. He said, help me take down, the Americans. And then she's just like, I will not wage war on people. And then they go back and forth. And she did ask him, she was like, yo, can we come up with a peaceful solution? And he was like, no. He said, the only solution that we have is for you to turn over the scientists. And while the two of them were having that conversation, Lupita snuck in and she rescued Shuri, she rescued Riri, and then they ended up killing two of the sea people, and then they ended up getting out. When Namor found out that his people got murked, he got mad and brought the fury of the underwater kingdom to Wakanda, and they fucked Wakanda up. They legitimately, like, they put their liquid boot straight up Wakanda's ass, and he did it with like 7 people. But during that whole thing, there was a moment where Angela Bassett's character and Riri, they were both in like the queen's chamber together, and and Namor, like, he flooded the whole chamber, and then he tried to drown both of them. Angela Bassett ended up pulling Riri out of the water, and although she saved Riri's life, her brain went without oxygen for way too long. And then after that, we found out that the queen was dead. And when they killed her, the first thing I noticed was Angela Bassett, up until she died, Angela Bassett was in this movie a lot, because in the first film she barely said a word, and the most talking she did was when they had to go to M'Baku and beg him for protection. Now, like, in this particular film, this girl was in every scene. She was whooping ass. She was at the American Council. She was at the World Council. She was fighting in Wakanda. I was just like, what is she not doing? I was like, yo, she had a legitimately significant role in this film up until she died. At first, I thought that was a bad move, because I was like, why would you kill her? Because everyone else is gone. It's like, you got to keep one person around. But then it dawned on me. I was like, well, if at some point they are gonna get like the heart-shaped herb back, Shuri needs to go to the spirit plane to talk to the ancestors. She can't talk to T'Challa, obviously, because Chadwick Boseman isn't around to shoot that scene. So she needs to have a conversation with somebody. And I was like, they basically killed her mom. So when she finally does make it to the spirit plane, she can have a conversation with her mom and not her brother. That was the thought. But I was definitely wrong about that one. So the queen is dead. Shuri's even more upset. Like she's like ready to rage war, and she's pissed off and then everything. And then they had Namor said, yeah, I have 1 week in order to turn over the scientists, and she was like, we're not going to do it. Shuri and Riri ended up working together. They ended up coming up with a formula to rebuild the heart-shaped herb. Once they rebuilt the heart-shaped herb, Shuri took it. She goes to the spirit plane, and then I was like, okay, here we go. She's in the spirit plane. Now she's gonna see her mama, and then instead of seeing her mama, surprise, surprise to me, because this came out of nowhere. Not only did she not see her brother, she did not see her mama or her daddy. She ended up seeing Michael B. Jordan's character, and I was like, wow, I forgot all about him. And kudos to them for keeping him dead. Because, and I still say this to this day, I apologize if you take offense to this, but so what? Having Michael B. Jordan, to all the people that said Michael B. Jordan should step in as Black Panther, was the dumbest thing on the planet. He was dead. And like we all saw him die. And y'all refused to believe his character was dead just because you wanted to see him play the Black Panther. You guys need to separate logic from what you really, really like, because I understand why you would want Michael B. Jordan to play the role, but it didn't make sense. and y'all tried too hard to make that make sense. And this proved without a shadow of a doubt that it wasn't going to make sense because he did. And him and Shuri had a nice conversation, and he was just like, look, he told her flat out. He was like, look, your brother was passive, like your daddy was a coward. He was like, your mama had balls and now she dead. But he was like, yo, who you gonna be? He was like, I was the only person in the family that was about it, and then he was just like, what you want to do? He said, what you want to do? He said, you want to be like your brother and, spare the life of the man who murdered your mom, or do you want to be like me and get your motherfucking revenge? And clearly she chose revenge because she ended up getting the power of the Black Panther. She went over to M'Baku. They had an arm wrestling contest that she almost won. And then after that, she gave herself like like the Black Panther suit. She put the suit on. And I was happy about that too, because like I said before, it only makes sense in the royal lineage that if the king is dead, then the crown, the mantle gets passed on to the next in line, which would be his sister. And I said from Jump Street, if anybody other than Shuri puts on that damn costume, I was going to walk out the theater. And so, because it wouldn't make sense for anybody else but her to wear it. She's the queen now. Like, she's in charge. She's supposed to be the damn Black Panther. So she gets her own Black Panther costume. She goes out. She gets the troops together. And they come up with a plan, because it was just like, because of his aqua physiology, they said that all we have to do is just dry him out, and then without water he'll suffocate and he'll pass out. So for some reason, because the whole plan was to get him away from water, they end up having a fight over water. And when they have a fight over water, then it was like the sea people versus Wakanda. It was Wakanda Forever, Ibambe. And it sounded, and I'm gonna admit, hearing Shuri say Ibambe and her saying Wakanda Forever, it was cool, but it felt weird at the same time because it wasn't Chadwick Boseman. I got to admit that. But then, like the battle ensues, everyone's fighting. Riri, for some reason, has the Hulk Buster armor from Iron Man, and I'm like, what is? See, I'm not in the camp of saying her role was insignificant. I see the purpose for her character. I just don't like the fact that they made her ghetto as hell, and I don't like the fact that she was from Massachusetts and not New York. But the whole thing based around her genius, I'm like, we need to explore that more. Why does this girl have an Iron Man Hulk Buster suit? So she's going around fighting people, everybody fighting people. Shuri gets a Tuma alone in an airplane. She dries them out with heat lamps, and then she gets them on the desert. For some reason, during their battle, Namor ended up taking a spear and throwing it directly through her body, and it didn't kill her. And I'm going to assume that the only reason why it didn't kill her was because she did take the, like the heart-shaped herb, which was supposed to give her the strength and the speed and the power of the Black Panther. So I'm going to assume that was the only thing that saved her, because I was like, why is this girl still breathing? There was a moment during the film where I thought we were just going to kill off the entire cast and we were never going to do Black Panther films again. But she survived, and She whooped his ass. Well, she got beat up. She got beat up a lot in the beginning, but then she finally got the better of him. She whooped his ass, and then instead of killing him, because she was gonna kill him, but she had a conversation with M'Baku, and then he was like, "Do not kill this man." He was like, "You must bring him to justice." And then she was like, "I want the revenge, for my family." But then he was just like, "Yeah," but but that man is like a god to his people, and he was like, "If you kill him, then you will rage a never-ending war." And he was like, "I would not subject my people to war." And then Shuri was like, "I'm the queen of Wakanda." So he's like, "So do what I say and shut the fuck up." And he did what she said and shut the fuck up. But in the end, I guess his words ended up getting to her, because he also did say, he was like, "Your brother wanted me to provide you with counsel." So he was her right hand. He was her counsel. He could have been in the movie a little bit more. But in the end, I guess his words did reach her, did get to her, because when the time came for her to kill Namor or let him go, she chose peace over revenge. And that did save the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people, because the two of them shook hands, and then they calmed down both of their sides. They went their respective ways, and everybody went back home. In the end, the blue Asian girl, she ended up saying to Namor, she was just like, "Oh," she was like, "It is not like you to lose a fight or to show mercy," or blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, "First of all, I'm the king, shut up." He was like, "Second of all, they're more important as an ally." And that makes sense, because he's smart in the sense to know that, and his exact words were, he said, at some point, the U.S. is coming for Wakanda. And when that day comes, they're going to turn to us for help. And then that's when both us and Wakanda team up together and we wipe out the United States. So he did choose peace, but he also chose the long game. And his long game is to basically one day, because that's all he wanted from the very beginning of the film. The only thing his character wanted was to team up with Wakanda to take down the U.S. And he feels like now he's on the path to getting that, and eventually, like I said, he just wants to wipe out the U.S. That's his whole thing. So, so that was basically it for that. We never saw him again. And then after that, it is now Challenge Day. And then, Shuri didn't show up for Challenge Day, which was probably smart, because M'Baku was supposed to challenge for the crown. And it takes us to a scene where she ended up, going to Haiti to go hang out with Lupita, and I guess like mourn the loss of her brother and her mama. And although we only got although she was there to mourn the loss of her brother and her mom, we only got flashbacks of her brother, rightfully so. And then it was just like her just sitting there, in front of a fire, just crying. They did a nice little flashback on Chadwick Boseman's character. She did restore Okoye to glory. I think she's the general again, and she got a new costume. Everybody got costumes. And they said after that, the movie just ended with Shuri crying over the loss of her brother, and then the credits rolled. And then we got the end credit scene. In the end credit scene, Lupita showed up with a little boy. And she said that the reason why she hasn't been in a Marvel film since the first Black Panther was because after the first Black Panther, her and Chadwick Boseman did the deed, and she got pregnant and ended up having his baby. And they decided to keep the baby in Haiti, I guess, to keep him safe away from war. So T'Challa's character completely knew that he had a son. He was well aware of the fact that he had a son, and I'm pretty sure he visited his son every chance that he got. They were very well prepared about his illness. They knew of the illness. That's why they didn't go to the funeral. They had a private ceremony themselves, and they did say that Angela Bassett's character did get to meet him, because when she went to Haiti to go talk to Lupita to get her to join the mission, I would assume that was the moment where she introduced him to her grandchild, so she actually got to meet him too. Because Shuri did say, she was like, "Did my mother meet him?" And then she was like, "Yes." So then, then he was just like, "This is your Aunt Shuri." And then she was like, "Tell him who you are." Then he said his name was Toussaint, but that was his Haitian name, and that his I guess his African name, his Wakandan name is Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Challa, and eventually he will be the ruler of the throne. And then Shuri started crying, the boy smiled, and that's how the movie ended. So, and that was cute. That was cute, because having him have a son and giving him the exact same name that his daddy had, that's their way of recasting T'Challa without recasting T'Challa. Because instead of getting another black actor to step into the role and continue the story of T'Challa, the King of Wakanda, we instead get his son, who is also named T'Challa, who is the Prince of Wakanda and will eventually grow up to become the king. So it's like a soft reboot on the character. And although I can appreciate that, and it was done very beautifully. I will give them that. It was done very beautifully. At the same time, I still see what you're trying to do, and I'm still on the camp of you should have just recasted him. But but that was it. I said, but it was very nice. It wasn't the film that I wanted, but I enjoyed the film that I got. I said aside from a few things, like I really don't have any complaints. You should definitely go see it, if not for nothing, to honor the memory of the late great Chadwick Boseman. And thank you for tuning in. So that I would assume at this point where we go from here, like Namor is popping up in the future, but in order to fully solidify Shuri as like the new Black Panther from like an audience standpoint, we do need to see her interact with the rest of the Avengers. Like when it's time, when the world is at stake and Earth's quote unquote mightiest heroes come together to save the world, like Shuri needs to be there when that happens, and then everybody needs to give their condolences for the king, and then it needs to be this whole big thing. Like if we just keep her in Wakanda-based films, like I'm gonna be really mad at that. But share your questions, comments, and/or concerns down below. If you saw the movie, what did you think about it? Were you happy with how it ended? Would you have preferred they recasted T'Challa? Are you happy that they didn't? What do you think about the son, the character, Shuri taking the mantle, and every single thing in between? Check me out on Instagram and/or Twitter, where always on YouTube, where you can leave your questions, comments, and/or concerns. Because now that that's in the book, we got Wakanda Forever in the books. We've already did the Black Adam review, so the next film I believe that's coming up next is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and we will roll on as we continue that as well. So that was it, guys. So until next time, when we review some more movie action, some superhero movie action, whether DC or Marvel, take care, give your condolences to the king, respect the queen. It is Wakanda Forever. Until next time, we're out this.